Hello. Recently, Radio National, Australia's national radio station, released the top 100 books of the 21st century, and I thought it'd be really cool to go through what those 100 books were. Now, this wasn't done by a, bunch of book critics or authors or anything like that. It was voted on by the public. So if you don't agree with this list, you're basically being racist towards Australians. And I won't tolerate racism towards Aussies in my comments section. That's why God invented the French. Because it's voted on by the public, we have children's books in with hardcore literary fiction and non-fiction and thrillers and all sorts. It's really bombastic and interesting, and there is something in it for everybody. But also, you are not going to like every one of these 100 books, and that's what makes it a fascinating list. I'm going to go through all 100 books, but I'm going to try and do it really rapidly. I've definitely got a bit more to say about some books than other books. I've not read every book. I've only read about 2/3 of this list, so I will be quite rapid on some of these books. Starting at 100 is Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. Never read Liane Moriarty. I understand that she's quite a fun genre fiction sort of author. Not somebody that I tend to read, but she's super popular, and I understand that she's quite good at what she's doing. Just not for me. By the way, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about these books. I do it in every video, but I want you to know I don't think there's any such thing as a bad book. There's only bad matches between books and readers. So you're welcome to disagree with me all you want. That's fine. We just look for different things in books. At 99 is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. I really enjoy seeing this book on the list because I think Eugenides is such a great storyteller. It's a really well-rounded book in terms of themes and storylines and plot and characters and all these things coming together to make a really good novel. It does get a little bit of criticism for its clumsy handling of intersex people. It's definitely, I think it's quite progressive for the time it was written in, but maybe hasn't aged that well. Also, it does portray some trans hate in it, or some intersex hate in it, and that is coming from quite a nuanced character who is not necessarily a bad guy in it, but not all trans hate comes from the most obvious bigots in society, and I think that's a really interesting discussion to have. So I think that that's more an accurate representation of people rather than the author being a bigot. The True History of the Kelly Gang, Peter Carey won the Booker Prize. Aussies love an Aussie. You'll find a lot of Aussies on this list, and Peter Carey is an Aussie that we love, and Peter Carey is an author that I've never read before, so let me know in the comments section if he is worth reading. Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. I'm not a big fan of Anne Patchett myself. Not a bad writer, I just find her a little bit slow and not quite for me. She doesn't do it for me. A bit surprised to see Tom Lake make the list. I'd say that might be, a little bit of recency bias because it's only been out for a couple of years. I'd say if this was done in 5 years' time, it's not getting anywhere near this list. 95 Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Look, I said sometimes there are good books that don't work for readers, and this is definitely a book that doesn't work for me. It's a bit fantastical, but actually it's quite dull and boring and predictable, and the mystery element of it where there's literally nobody else that it could be, and I don't get what people get out of this book. It's Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. I hear George Saunders is a very weird but very talented author. I have avoided him because very weird scares me, because often very weird, very experimental is not my thing. But, won the Booker Prize just before I started reading the Booker Prize quite seriously. I do hear wonderful things about him, but probably one of the more big brain books on this list, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, exists. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn is a bit of a surprise to see on this list. I wish I didn't waste my time on it, But man, I'm being real negative. There are some really good books to come, trust me. But yeah, a bit surprised that Gone Girl made this list. It might be a bit of fun for readers, but I'm surprised people would have this as one of their best books of the century. Just the Bookbinder of Jericho by Pip Williams. Yeah, Pip Williams is a nice author, and I don't mean that in the most complimentary sense of the word. I'm sorry. But, you know, those people who are like, the world is too horrible to read about horrible things. I only want to read about nice things. Give them Pip Williams. This Is Going to Hurt, The Secret Diary of a Medical Resident by Adam Kay. Again, another one I've not read. There's quite a few early in this list. This actually sounds like a fascinating non-fiction book that, again, let me know in the comments section if you've read this. Is it good? Is it fascinating? Did you learn stuff? People of This Book by Geraldine Brooks and The House of Grief by Helen Garner. I am ashamed to say that I have read very little of these two Aussie greats. Geraldine Brooks is the only Aussie to win the Pulitzer Prize. Not sure why the Pulitzer Prize doesn't accept more Aussie applicants, but it's about time you did. Helen Garner, not the biggest author outside of Australia, but within Australia she is like instant bestseller whenever she's like our version of somebody like Ian McEwan or Kazuo Ishiguro or Harumi Kirakami or somebody like that, you know, like I'm not saying stylistically like those authors, but when they write a book and they release a book, everybody pays attention, and it's weird that she never quite made it. But again, very underrated, both these women. And if you're a regular viewer here, should I prioritize a bit of Helen Garner? I know I should prioritise Geraldine Brooks. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Again, I said recency bias to Anne Patchett. I think a lot of recency bias to Rebecca Yarros, but you can't deny that this book isn't absolutely massive, and Rebecca Yarros isn't just about the biggest author in the world right now. I've not read it. I don't know if she's a good author or not. I do know that she is super popular and writing stuff that is not really my wheelhouse. Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I will never understand the love for Cloud Atlas. It is just a bunch of short stories that he got bored of writing and then decided, well, he better finish them off, but he decided to like start them, stop them, start another one, stop another one, and then finish them all off together. Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none, and yeah, Jack's a bit generous. I'd probably say more of a 3 of clubs. Chai Time at Cinnamon Gardens by Shankiri Chandran. This is a recent Miles Franklin winner. A little bit surprised to see this in there, but I really enjoyed this book. It is about Sri Lankan refugees coming to Australia and starting a nursing home, and the employees in that nursing home. It sort of goes into the racism that these people have to deal with in various parts of their life, and there's this sort of mixed family, and there's, you know, a little bit of tension within the mixed family, and it's a really complex discussion of racism. And one of my favourite things is it looks at some of the views that we might say are less harmful racism when we compare it to things like, you know, violence against brown people, and it shows how those points of view that are more socially acceptable give a level of respectability or acceptability rather to the horrible stuff, and it sort of allows those sort of things to foster. Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. Very surprised to see this in. I think Charlotte Wood is a terrific writer. I just don't think she's top 100 books of the century good. This made the short list of the Booker Prize, not this year, the year before, and is just a book about isolation. It's lovely writing. But yeah, I mean, one of the surprises of this top 100, quite a literary character portrait. The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart by Holly Ringland. Not read it. Do know that Holly Ringland is super popular, and this has a reputation as a very good book club book. Carpentaria by Alexis Wright. A lot of people are going to be upset when they realise that a certain other book by Alexis Wright did not make the top 100. I've never quite gotten the fanfare for Alexis Wright she is an author who does too many things at once and lacks focus for me, but other people absolutely adore her. Total respect for people who can hold that many thoughts in their head at once. I like simple thoughts that have complex depth to them. I don't like complex thoughts. That's why I don't enjoy Alexis Wright, but you can't deny that she isn't, probably the most popular Aussie writer going at the moment. She's absolutely adored in literary fiction circles. Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. This won the Miles Franklin Prize a few years ago. It's a really good novel, but if you want to read a Melissa Lukashenko, please read Eden Glassy. She wrote Eden Glassy a few years after Too Much Lip, and you can really see her evolution as a author, and I think that if this list was done in a couple of years' time, that is the book that we would see high up on this list from Melissa Lukashenko. But you've got to give books a little bit of time to permeate into the culture. Bill Bryson, A Short History of Nearly Everything, A Journey Through Space and Time. Yeah, I enjoy Bill Bryson, but I do think he's overrated. Colm Tobin, Brooklyn. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic novel. Bit surprised to see it in the top 100 because it's a little bit gentle, but I do like this complex little choice between immigration and love and home, and I think it pairs really well with its sequel Long Island, which is based something like 20 years after Brooklyn. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Definitely worthwhile reading those two Colm Tobin books if you like character writing. The Woman by Kirsten Hanna. I'm surprised that this isn't The Nightingale, to be honest, but I've only read one Kirsten Hanna book, and that is The Nightingale, so maybe I'm biased. I quite liked The Nightingale, to be honest, but I've never been tempted to pick up her books again. Probably shows you what I really think of her. Polished, but not doing anything amazing. Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. Look, I DNF'd this. I got to be honest, it was a long time ago. I don't remember why I didn't like it. I do know that this is popular, and it sort of has that sort of somewhere in between Kirsten Hanna and Sarah Waters sort of vibe to it. Where is the Green Sheep by Mem Fox? This is a children's book. It's quite rhymey and I quite enjoy it. Mem Fox is probably better known for Possum Magic, but I think that's probably too old to make this list. The Happiest Refugee by An Do. An Do is like addicted to writing. He is the biggest children's author in Australia, and he is a Vietnamese Australian who came here when he was quite young and has made a name for himself on television and in the literary space, and he seems like a very delightful, charming man, but I've never read this book. The Overstory by Richard Powers, not at all surprised to see this book in the top 100, and well-loved story. I found it very boring and I didn't enjoy it, but it's very much a love it or hate it book, and I think that if you don't like this book, you find it boring, and if you do like this book, you find it enchanting. That's pretty much the only two opinions you can come out of this novel with. The Happiest Man on Earth, The Beautiful Life of an Auschwitz Survivor. This is so popular in the library. I'm forever picking this book from my holds list. People just want to read it. It's ticking over and over and over. Not read it myself, but I find something a bit odd about Auschwitz and happiest in the same sentence. I'm sure that it's more nuanced and detailed, like maybe you have to go through a lot of darkness before you appreciate what you have or something like that, but yeah, it's a bit weird. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Look, yeah, okay, this was delightful and enjoyable and a bit naff and light. Perfectly acceptable in between other books if you just want a little bit of light reading between heavier books, in my opinion, but don't expect it to be anything amazing. The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. I adore this book. It's so rare that you see an author just be able to encapture characters that are so different, even though they come from the same family. they're so different, and he's encapsulated it so well, and there are so many little subplots in this book that just make you want to keep on reading. And I know some people hate the way that this book ended. I don't mind it, but I completely understand if you hate the way it ended. Just go into this being prepared to hate the ending, but you'll absolutely adore the way that he constructs this family of 4 and the various characters within it. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. It's this good little interesting science fiction novel. It's quite entertaining. Top 100 territory, I'm a bit surprised. But it does represent a certain style of book, and I think that you can do a lot worse than pick up an Emily St. John Mandel book, whoever you are. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Matt Haig is an author who I see a range of opinions about, and is an author who people adore, and this book does go a little bit viral. Education by Tara Westover. Not read Tara Westover's memoir. Circe by Madeline Miller won the Women's Prize. We went through this huge phase of feminist Greek mythology retellings. I mean, we still get books, but not as much as we did 5-6 years ago. And I think Circe is the book to really sort of encapture that movement. The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. I just don't get the love for Heather Morris. I've read her books. They're naff. I probably shouldn't say that because she's speaking at my library in a few days' time, and maybe I shouldn't put something out there that says I think she's a bit of an average author. But there we go. One of Australia's absolutely best authors, however, is Richard Flanagan. Question 7 is this unusual blending of non-fiction and fiction. Is Flanagan writing a memoir about his life and his dad's life, or is he writing autofiction, or what is he doing? I don't know, but I just found this a really, really good read. A really interesting discussion of what makes these characters who they are and their identity, and how national events shape their identity, and it sort of links H.G. Wells and World War II and an event from Richard Flanagan's past where he nearly drowned, and it's interesting. Bel Canto by Anne Patchett. I just don't like this book, and you're welcome to disagree with me. The Covenant of Water by Adam Verghese. I'm surprised that this made the list. I'm just absolutely flabbergasted, to be honest. Already spoken about Helen Garner. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Well, I thought Circe was her biggest book, but apparently Australians think that it's the Song of Achilles. Fair enough. We can... it seems that it's pretty close. Mark Hammond, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night. This is an interesting book for how it has been received by different generations of people, from being this very positive, inclusive book to being a book that is the complete opposite of that in a lot of people's opinions. Still, I think I really enjoy the way Haddon made such a simple story to be so important, and it sort of demonstrates to me, and I think if you're a wannabe writer who wants to look at how you handle plot, you should read Haddon. The journey is of absolutely tiny steps, but because of how he's constructed his characters, the journey becomes epic and you invest in them. I do find it very hard to get into the debates about whether this book is problematic in its portrayal of people with autism, because it is not making sweeping statements about those people. It is making statements about the protagonist in the book. It is, I'm not sure you're meant to read a single character as a statement on all characters, but that doesn't mean I disagree with what people are saying. It just means that I see the argument as much more shades of grey than it is presented online as black and white. James by Percival Everett. I mean, if you've not read James by Percival Everett yet, please just do it. Nobody thinks this is a bad book. nobody thinks this is a bad book. It's a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the point of view of Jim, and it is just such a clever and playful retelling. In one way, it is celebrating Twain. In another way, it's criticizing him, but it's not mean in its criticism. It's not derogatory in any way. It's not calling him out. It's saying that we all are writing from a point of view, and Twain is writing from his own point of view, and he couldn't have the point of view that Percival Everett would have, or a black author of the time would have had, because everybody knows what they know because of the relations they have in the society they live in, and so on and so forth. And it just gives you that extra point of view that enriches Huckleberry Finn, and Huckleberry Finn in turn enriches James. It's a book that makes other books better. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. I think that this is a really cool non-fiction book. I do believe that some of the stuff in it is no longer correct, but it's absolutely fascinating to see what Harari has to say about how humans became the way they are, and things like how Europe and Asia have this sort of east-west line of agriculture, where with North America it's more north-south. So it's a lot easier for Europe and Asia to sort of trade fruits. Alexander McCall Smith is huge in Australia. I must confess, I didn't even know he was an author until I started working in the library, and my God, he's bloody everywhere, isn't he? And yeah, I've never read him. I don't know what he's about. He writes some sort of crime mystery books. Bernardine Evaristo, Girl, Woman, Other. I mean, if you're talking the top 100 books of the 21st century and this book doesn't make the list, then there's something wrong. My only criticism is 55 is too low. This should definitely be a top 20 book. Lovely little feminist novel demonstrating the different views and the different lives of women, and it creates this like kaleidoscopic view of womanhood. Very, very well executed. The Rosie Project by Graham Simeon, quite a popular little novel. This won a few awards in Australia about a decade ago, still getting a lot of borrows at the library, still getting a lot of people loving it. Never read it, never been tempted to read it. Prophet Song by Paul Lynch. I hate this book for the pettiest of petty reasons. Use a line break, Paul. Use a line break. I understand that a lot of people loved this book, and it really encaptured a period of instability and threat that maybe has come to pass already. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson is just one of the best Nordic noir thrillers that you will ever read. It, for me, captures the way that genre fiction can be written to a more sophisticated level without deviating from what it really is. There is nothing overly complex about this book, but it's just written to that better quality, and it's a sort of quality book that I expect when I pick up. And unlike Gillian Flynn before on this list, I completely understand why this is in your top 100 books. I might not put it in my top 100 books, but I definitely wouldn't argue with you putting it in there. I think it's an absolutely thrilling read. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I mean, Taylor Jenkins Reid is so popular. This is her most popular book. You know, I didn't find it a bad book, but I wouldn't say it was particularly good. But it is that sort of inoffensive book that people love. And completely the opposite to number 50, as we're halfway through, The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. You know, when I look at this list, there are certain books I'm like, oh, I didn't realise that was technically the 21st century. And, you know, you want to go and you want to check the dates sometimes. Yeah, it turns out it's 2002. I sort of mentioned recency bias with what I perceive as a few of these. And then you have a book like this that is, you know, now over 20 years old, and it's still remembered for a reason. It's dark, and it's told from the point of view of a ghost, and it's about murdering children. And I definitely think that this is going to be one of those sort of classic books that people keep coming back to and keep reading. And if you haven't read it yet, put it on your TBR. You don't have to get to it straight away, but you do have to get to it at some point. Khaled Hosseini, A Thousand Splendid Suns. This is a devastating book. I'm a big fan of Khaled Hosseini. Don't know why he doesn't write more books, because the two novels that he has written are just heartbreaking. So memorable. This book has something in it that I'll never forget in a novel as long as I read, to do with the rice and the rocks, if you've read the book. But there's a lot in this book that is educational. Jan Mattel, The Life of Pi, won the Man Booker Prize. It's an interesting and a weird novel that is often criticised, but also often makes these lists. When you have a book that I think is classified as magical realism, and I read it, and I liked it. I wouldn't say it was my favourite book, but I enjoyed it. I think that having me say that about a magical realism novel, if you're a regular viewer, you know I might as well be saying that it's a 5-star amazing read. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the best novel ever written, but it's really worthwhile reading. Horse by Geraldine Brooks. Solid book. Surprised it's made the top 100 of the century. Audrey Niffenegger, The Time Traveller's Wife. This is another book I'm surprised is on this list, but again, it's because of the publication date, 2003. You got those books around that area, and your memory is so fuzzy. They feel like they've been around for so much longer than they actually have. Audrey Niffenegger is an interesting author who, there's some things about this book and the romance in this book that can be interpreted in quite horrific ways, and I'm not quite sure what she was trying to do with them. I don't have an alternative interpretation for that, but also I think that it's very good at pulling on your emotional heartstrings and getting you to invest in these characters. But it's a love story about somebody who is unstuck in time and somebody who is stuck in time, and they see each other, and one of them is old and one of them is young, and vice versa, and it maybe starts a little bit too young for one of them, in my opinion, but it does. I don't know. Limberlost by Robbie Arnott. Is this really Robbie Arnott's best book? Is this the one that we want to include in the top 100? I'm not sure, but Robbie Arnott is an Australian author who is absolutely adored, and a quality author. All That I Am by Anna Fonda. Anna Fonda is an absolute powerhouse non-fiction author, and this is one of several of her books that have made the list. Frederick Backman, A Man Called Ove. You're always surprised to see what books will make this list, and I know that this is a loved book, but again, I was a bit surprised to see it. Who doesn't love a cranky old man actually having a heart and finding its sort of narrative? It's a very easy to like story, isn't it? Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. Heartbreaking and emotionally intense. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful book, and not surprised it made the list. Dirt Music by Tim Winton. I'm surprised we haven't had more Tim Winton on this list yet, because if you're talking about Aussie authors who are big in Australia, is there anybody bigger than Tim Winton? Maggie O'Farrell, Hamnet. I'm almost surprised that this book wasn't number one on the list. I think it's such a well executed novel by Maggie O'Farrell. Oh, 2 double letters in the middle of your names. I've not done that sort of spoonerism before. I love the way that she uses language to write back to Shakespeare. I love the way she creates individual storylines within her chapters and an overarching storyline. She just does so many simple things really well. About Shakespeare's wife and children, it's just this is how you tell a story. Breath by Tim Winton is about things that kill celebrities in weird ways. Again, I guess now we're seeing a bit more Tim Winton. The Slap. I've not read this book, and I hear mixed reactions about it. I have seen the ads for the miniseries, and whenever I see the ads, I'm like, what, why? But it's about a parent who disciplines another parent's child at like a birthday party or something, and the tension that creates. The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I DNF'd this book recently for talking in circles and letting humour get in the way of narrative, and I didn't find Richard Osman as funny as I find him on television. Sorry, that's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think it's very good. Elizabeth Strout, Olive Kitteridge. I mean, I've never read Olive Kitteridge, and I never will, because it's written by Elizabeth Strout. She is yawn fest. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I mean, how can you not include Kazuo Ishiguro? Anything he published in the 21st century, really. Such an accomplished writer. So good at what he does. And I found this novel so simple yet complex in the way that he makes this story so straightforward, and he hints at everything else. And he lets your imagination create terror in this world. Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I mean, if you like family sagas, this is the one, I guess. Not one of my favourite books. I think it goes on for a bit too long, and the generations aren't thematically linked. But if you like family sagas, it's good. Normal People by Sally Rooney. I mean, of course, you've got Normal People by Sally Rooney on this list. That's kind of obvious. Rooney divides readers. She always will. But I think you have to read Rooney, and then if you don't like her, you don't like her, and you don't read any more of her. But I think give her a try, because if you're one of the people who love her, she's just such an incredible author. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Donna Tartt is a bit of an institution, but where is your fourth book, Donna? It's been 11 years. The 10-year cycle has been broken. I just think that this is a really, really cool story of a young man growing up and the impact certain events have on him, and it's a great discussion of depression and privilege and adoption and so on and so forth. Stuzzyland by Anna Funder. Lola in the Mirror by Trent Dalton. I've only read one Trent Dalton, and it wasn't Lola in the Middle, and it is on this list, and I'll talk about it when we get to it, but I'm not a big fan of Trent Dalton. The Dry by Jane Harper. I've never read Jane Harper because she writes outback thrillers, and they're not my thing, but I understand she's super popular here. My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can make a top 100 of the 21st century and not include Elena Ferrante in your list. I think that this is a really solid, brilliant novel. I encourage everybody to read this book and to take your time and to be patient with it and to give it a chance to create its characters and to do its things, and understand that it's in the nuance and the execution that makes this book really, really well written. I'm perhaps a little bit surprised it's not closer to the top 10, but if I were to make my own list, I'd maybe put it around this place. The Hunger Games by Susanna Collins. I mean, we all know what The Hunger Games is. It's been such an iconic book, and while there has been a few children's books on this list, they've been fairly underrepresented, and I think the thing about The Hunger Games that is so good is that it has broad appeal, in that it is a good read for children, but that there's still quite a lot that adults can get out of it, and some of the themes are actually very complex for what it actually is. And I think that the best children's books are books that recognize that young adults are just as intelligent as adults. Honeybee by Craig Silvey. This is one of my all-time favourite novels. This unlikely friendship between a queer, gender-questioning, gender-exploring young individual and this old man who is miserable, and the such different lives they've lived, and that they meet while they're about to jump off a bridge and kill themselves, and the old man sees this young kid and thinks, you can't be killing yourself. I'm old, I've got nothing to live for, but you're young, I must save you. I love an unlikely friendship. It's one of my favourite tropes, but there's so much more that's good about this book. Jasper Jones by Craig Silvey. So Craig Silvey, 24 and 25. Look, I really like Jasper Jones, but if you're going to read one Craig Silvey, it's got to be Honeybee. It's the far superior book in my mind. Jasper Jones is great. I enjoyed it. It's a really good book, but it doesn't stand up to Honeybee. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I enjoyed the start of this book, but it really rapidly ran out of steam and I found myself not caring about it. Kayla Hassani, The Kite Runner. Look, if you've read The Kite Runner and you haven't read 1,000 Splendid Suns or vice versa, they're very similar books. You can't like one and not like the other, and you can't dislike one and not dislike the other. Brutal, miserable, horrible books that are unforgettable and tense and heartbreaking. And Atonement by Ian McEwan. I can never say his name. Ian McEwan. Always add a Q to his name, don't I? Another one that I'm sort of like, was that really the 21st century? Surely it's the 20th century book, but let's find out. 2001. So, I think if I were to do this list off the top of my head, I think that those first, 5 years of the century, they'd be very underrepresented by the fuzziness of time in my mind. This is a novel about infidelity and misunderstandings and what is seen and what is not seen and the consequences things have and how to make up for those mistakes. I think that this is one of those books that, whether you like it or not, it's a book that you can read a second time and a third time and get extra things out of it. And that, I think, is always the sign of good writing. Regardless of whether you like the book or not, you have to acknowledge the talent that an author can do that. The Secret River by Kate Grenville. I've not read this one, but I'm not surprised to see Kate Grenville make the list. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. 2006, I really thought that was much older than that. When I saw that, I'm like, that'll have to be 2000, because I'm very fuzzy. Should you read The Road? The Road is sort of a literary dystopian, thriller-esque, zombie-ish novel about self-survival and parenthood and choices that need to be made. It's definitely talking about some of the darker aspects of humanity. Not a book for everybody, but it's a book worth reading. However, if you need to look up the trigger warnings for this book, don't read it. Just don't. Just accept that it's a good book and that there are good books that you won't get to. Everybody else, put it on your TBR. Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe is this wonderful book that every Aussie needs to read. I don't know how long this book will be relevant for. I really, truly hope that it's not long, but I fear that it will be forever. As an Australian living in a predominantly white culture, raised in an even more predominantly white culture, like the same culture but in the 80s and 90s, you're told certain things and those things are not always true. Maybe they're things that have been passed down from generation to generation and the person saying them thinks they're true. I don't know what's going on, but there is commonly held misinformation about Australia's Indigenous people and Indigenous past, and Bruce Pascoe examines how the Australian Aboriginal people lived before white settlement and what we don't know about it and what we're not told about it, and things like this really cool rock formation that they created in the river that traps fish, so that if you're hungry, you can just come up and you can grab a fish out of this tiny little pool, and that you leave the other fish for the next person that's hungry, but that there's always fish there. This like mega structure within a river that has this really simple and amazingly practical purpose. And there are so many little things like that. And we're sort of told that the Aboriginals didn't build everything, and it really challenges the narrative that you've been told about. And that is wonderful. It's just a correction of everything you know. Wifedom by Anna Funder. Look, I haven't talked about Anna Funder because I haven't read any of these 3 books. I always meant to read Wifedom. I never got around to it. So I'd love to know what you think of Anna Funder in the comments section. I do hear wonderful things about her. Still Life by Sarah Winham. I'm surprised that this is on the list so high. I do recognise there's a lot of love for this. I couldn't get into it, but people who love this book. So maybe give it a go, but be very willing to DNF it. Yet another Geraldine Brooks. The Year of Wonders is definitely widely considered her best book. And I'd love to know if you've read it. Should I read it? Because I haven't. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine by Gail Honeyman. I mean, I find it difficult not to love this book. Is it complex? Is it particularly amazing? I'm not sure, but I just absolutely adored Eleanor. I adored Ray and their friendship. That was, for me, just reading about this lovely friendship between these two people, and then just the humour that it was written in. And also I love the little Easter eggs on the cover of this book. Richard Flanagan, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. You know, when you read these lists, every now and then you see a book and you're like, why haven't I got to that book yet? I think Richard Flanagan is an absolutely incredible author. I've not read this. Is this his best book? If you're a Flanagan fan, is this the one book of his you should read? Let me know in the comments. Where the Crawdads Sing, Delia Owens. Yeah, absolutely shocked to see this so high on the list. It's a bit of a mystery thriller, but told in a completely different, very much not your traditional mystery thriller. And I think that is a cool, clever way of reinventing a genre and doing something a bit different with it. I didn't find this book particularly believable, and I thought that the themes of persecution and otherness could have been better written. If you want those themes but you don't want to go too deep into them, I think that there's a value to this book. Also, it does suck you in. Just missing out on the top 10 is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I think that this is Keegan's best. I know a lot of people say it's Foster. It's not. It's Small Things Like These. You're wrong. You're just wrong. Sometimes we can disagree and still be friends, and other times you're just wrong. No, but I think there are very few authors whose prose I praise, because I think prose is there to communicate, and so it must be effective. But every now and then you read an author like Keegan and you go, oh my god, that is why good prose is so delicious. That is why I love good prose. And this is one of those books. Keegan is the master of these really short novels, and she does so much in so little time, and it creates this lovely density to her work. Okay, time for the top 10. It's Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel at 10. I have a confession. I've never read Wolf Hall. I have only ever read one Hilary Mantel book. It was about the French Revolution. It was bad. I accept that authors grow and change, and I accept that she is a loved author, but her books are so big, and I've already had one strike with her. I'm really struggling to take the chance and give her a second shot. I'd love to know what you think of Wolf Hall, though. A retelling of the War of the Roses, Thomas Cromwell, and all that saga, Henry VIII, and so on. And number 9 is A Little Life by Hanya Yangahara. I don't get it. I love miserable books. This is a bad one. If you want to feel misery, read Douglas Stewart, read Thomas Hardy. I don't get the love for A Little Life. It lacks complexity and character development. It is the same thing on repeat for 40 years. And I super object to the demonstration of frustration in love by throwing razor blades at your spouse. It's really, I think, poorly written. But some people love it. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I have been criticised for DNFing this book until the cows come home. It's a retelling of David Copperfield, and I'm going to recommend this. Beat your head against a brick wall until you forget Demon Copperhead. Please don't actually be violent, especially to your head. That's a bad idea. But, you need to erase David Copperfield from your brain before you read this book, because it changes the book from predictable to tense. And I think that is the difference between this being a good and a bad read. Although, if you're a super fan of Charles Dickens, you're probably like, nah, I love this anyway, so I respect that. The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. Utterly shocked to see this in the top 10. It's a sort of a light, almost feminist novel about the creation of the dictionary and so on, but isn't it? It's quite a diet book, and it's not doing anything particularly well. Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. Not surprised to see this in the top 100. Surprised to see this in the top 10. I think this is a very interesting book. We've got queerness, we've got ghosts, we've got coming to Australia and settling in it. It sort of does this lovely thing where you're not sure whether you're reading commercial fiction or literary fiction, but you're kind of reading both. Is this a coming of age? Is this a romance? Is this a family saga? Is this a colonialism novel? What is actually going on here? It's all of those things, which gives the book a little bit of complexity to it. I mean, it's quite an enjoyable, good read. A top 10 should be for special books, and it's just a really good book. That's my opinion. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Yeah, okay. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I don't quite get the love for Anthony Doerr, but yeah, I mean, it's about World War I or II, one of the two, I forget, but A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I've never read A Gentleman in Moscow or Amor Towles. I hear some really good things about it. I've always meant to give him a try. I don't hold the most hope about it because it's so popular, but I would love to. Should I read A Gentleman in Moscow? Is it a good book? Let me know in the comments section. I'm quite confused. Right, at number 2 is Marcus Zuzak's The Book Thief. I think that this book gets criticised unfairly. I think it's a very good book. Number 2, it's not number 2. Narrated by Death and a little girl, and it's moving. It's one of the best young adult books you will read. I think that the reason this gets criticised is that people judge it based on the book that they want it to be, not on who the intended audience is. It's a book written for teenagers, and I think that it does that very well. It's a book that I think it's so well written that as adults we can get some pleasure out of it, and then we can be annoyed that it doesn't do more. And that leaves us with number 1, which is Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton, and I'm confused. I do not get the love for Trent Dalton. You know how sometimes you read a book and it's literary and it's commercial and it's succeeding at both, and that is absolutely wonderful, and you get all the joys of reading a good literary fiction and all the joys of reading a good commercial fiction. I feel like this is the opposite of that. I feel like it was neither, but some people love the book apparently. I don't mean to end on a downer, but I don't get the love for Trent Dalton. But as I've said all along in this video, every book that is published is a good book. Some books are good books for you, and some books are good books for other people. And this is a good book for other people. I mean, maybe it's a literary snob in me, but I'm not sure that I like seeing a thriller as the number one book. I don't know. So that's the 100 books. Probably for me, the book that I'm most surprised didn't make it is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Very, very few translated books on the list. Very few books by people of colour. I think that's a very interesting demonstration about how privileged and racism works, being that if you're part of a minority group that maybe you don't get the exposure. But we sort of expect those things when we're having a list that is voted on by members of the public. This is one of the ways that we know racism works, in that the majority of people don't see the minority views as worthwhile or reflective of a culture, and that creates its own problems. But that's just what happens. So criticizing a vote for doing what we know happens seems a bit strange. On this list, there are so many wonderful, wonderful books. I would love to know which one of these books you loved, but also which books are missing. There's quite a few books missing from this. I've named one, The Vegetarian. There's so many more. What do you think should be on this list? I would love to know in the comments section. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.